BBC News, I'm John Shea. Hundreds of Israeli soldiers backed by drones and armoured bulldozers are continuing a sustained assault on Palestinian militants in the occupied West Bank city of Jenin. More than 12 hours after Israeli forces began what they described as a counter-terrorism operation, explosions and exchanges of gunfire could still be heard. Palestinians have been throwing stones at Israeli troops. Our correspondent Paul Adams has more on the militants known as the Jenin Brigades.
They're a collection of mostly young fighters, loosely affiliated with militant groups like Hamas and Islamic Jihad. Crucially, they have almost complete disdain for the Palestinian Authority. Most have never known any kind of meaningful peace process, and they blame the traditional leadership for doing nothing to prevent Israel's gradual colonization of the West Bank. For them, the battle against occupation is all that matters. Hardline members of Israel's far-right government have been pushing for the army to take robust action for months, apparently against the better instincts of some within the Israeli military, who fear that it could inflame an already volatile situation.
The United States has expressed its support for Israel's security. The White House said Israel had a right to defend itself against what it called terrorist groups. The Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas chaired an emergency meeting with officials which decided to suspend all contacts with the Israeli government and halt security cooperation. More than $1 million have been pledged to a fundraising campaign in France in support of the policeman who shot dead a teenager, sparking nationwide unrest. The appeal said the officer had done his job and had paid a high price. The grandmother of the boy who was killed said she was heartbroken by the show of support. Here's our Europe regional editor, Paul Moss.
Just in case France didn't feel quite divided enough, the recent riots have prompted two rival fundraising campaigns. It's a right-wing commentator, Jean Messia, who's been seeking donations for the police officer. 40,000 people heeded that call, and the leader of the Conservative Republicans Party has said he too might contribute. But all this has infuriated MPs on the political left and centre. One from the governing Renaissance Party called the donations indecent and scandalous. Far less money has been raised for the family of Nael Merzouk, who was shot dead. His grandmother said that left her heartbroken.
An audio statement has appeared on social media purporting to be from the head of the Russian mercenary group Wagner, who staged a short-lived rebellion 10 days ago. If authentic, it would be the first such recording by Evgeny Prigozhin in a week. He says what he calls his march for justice was aimed at fighting traitors and mobilising society. He says he thinks it succeeded in much of that. This is the latest world news from the BBC. The British government has rejected a proposal being considered by Scotland's Orkney Islands that they should seek more autonomy or even rejoin Norway, which ruled them until 1472. The local council leader says that Orkney, just to the north of the British mainland, is underfunded by both Scotland and Britain. He says Orcadians want to strengthen their historical ties with Scandinavia. The Senegalese president, Macky Sall, is expected to give a speech shortly, announcing whether he intends to run for a third term. The opposition leader, Ousmane Sonko, has called for nationwide protests if Mr Sall decides to take part in next year's elections. The constitution limits the number of terms to 2. But Mr Sall's supporters say an amendment in 2016 to reduce the length of presidential terms means his first one doesn't count. South Africa's football authorities say talks are being held with the women's national team, which is in turmoil, only weeks before the start of the World Cup in New Zealand and Australia. Team members boycotted a warm-up match against Botswana on Sunday as part of a pay dispute and other squad issues. Nomsa Maseko reports.
Unequal pay, salary disputes and dissatisfaction on bonus agreements are the main reasons for the long-standing clash between South Africa's most successful national football team and the country's football association. Football's world governing body, FIFA, announced an incentive of $30,000 for World Cup-bound players. The South African team asked for written assurances that they would get the money, but this hasn't been forthcoming. Instead, the players were allegedly told they could leave the camp over the disagreement.
In tennis, Novak Djokovic has made a successful start to his title defence at Wimbledon. The Serb advanced to the second round with a convincing victory over Pedro Cachin. The match faced a lengthy delay because of rain. And that's the latest BBC World News.